Welcome to this episode of The Wisdom of Paramahansa Yogananda, brought to you by Self-Realization Fellowship, where each week you can receive inspiration and guidance from Paramahansa Yogananda's Kriya Yoga teachings. The subject of this episode is The Deeper Teachings of Jesus by Brother Nikhilananda.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our service. It's a joy to be with you. Our subject this morning is the deeper teaching of Jesus Christ. Today, on Palm Sunday, almost 2,000 years ago, Jesus entered triumphantly the city of Jerusalem, not as a worldly king with riches and a vast army, but rather on a lowly donkey with his humble disciples. And in those days, it was custom for someone entering who was quite a personality to spread palm branches along the path, which was done then. And the symbol means victory, triumph. And so this is what his followers were doing as he entered Jerusalem. Paramahansa said once that Jesus demonstrated in his every act of ministering to the sick and forsaken, and in the consummate sacrifice of his body to alleviate the sins of many, the incomparable love of God, that is infinitude of mercy and forgiveness. So the paramount meaning of the birth of Jesus is the infinite compassion and forgiveness of God. Some time ago, we watched a film about the life of Jesus, which some of you may have seen, Jesus of Nazareth. And I always remember one especially beautiful scene where Jesus is speaking in a little village to the people. And he's telling them that the kingdom of God is at hand. It is within us. It's not in the clouds, in the past or the future, but it is here and now. And he encouraged them, follow me. And one of the people who came joining the crowd was Matthew, the tax collector, who was not very liked by the people. And yet he was drawn to the presence of Jesus. And as Jesus ended his little sermon, he looked at Matthew and he invited himself to his home. And his disciples were aghast. They said, "But Master, this is not a good idea. He is not very well liked. And what would it do to your reputation, to enter the house of the tax collector?" But Jesus just smiled. And so in the evening, true to his word, he entered the house of Matthew, who was having quite a party, very worldly. And Matthew didn't expect him really to come, but there was Jesus. And his apostles were standing outside. They didn't dare to come in. But Jesus just came in and everybody became silent. And Matthew offered him a seat and something to eat. But then Jesus said, "I would like to share with you a little story." And so everybody sat down and became quiet. And he shared the story of the father and the two sons, where one son, the younger one, asked for his inheritance. And so the father divided it equally between both of them. And soon after, the younger son couldn't wait to leave home, and he left. And he lived a quite unruly life. And at some point, he ran out of money, and he was nearly destitute. And just during that time was also a great famine swept the country. So there he was, having lost all his wealth, thinking back to his father, where even the servants had more food to eat and to spare. And so he realized his big mistake, and so he made up his mind to return back home. And his father heard of his coming, and he was so happy to have him coming back, retracing his steps back home, that he hurried towards him and embraced him. But the son said, "Father, I'm not worthy being embraced by you, called your son. I have sinned against you and the heaven." But the father just said to his servants, "Bring the best robe and clothe him and prepare the best food, and let us eat and rejoice, because my son who was lost is found again. My son who was dead is alive again." And as Jesus was sharing this story, Matthew and his brother James and the others started to rise, and they realized that the story was really about their own life. They had not dealt very wisely with their wealth. And as we know, soon after, Matthew, of all the people, the tax collector, became an apostle and followed Jesus. And also his brother James. And every time I see this story, it really is overwhelming how God is looking after us, waiting for the moment when we retrace our steps back home, to our eternal home. And likewise, God has given all of us great inner wealth, but we have not always used it wisely, but now we are retracing our step back home. And our Guru, we can only imagine, and our divine friend is overjoyed that we are retracing our step back. And when we sit down to meditate, we can at times feel that welcome, that embrace. And God and the divine ones are sharing with us that divine manna, that divine food with us to celebrate. Now from the New Testament, St. Matthew chapter 11, 28 through 30, is speaking about this very situation, where Jesus says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart. And you shall find rest unto your soul. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." From Maharanji's commentary, Jesus lovingly urged all spiritual aspirants to come unto me and take my yoke upon you. Follow the step-by-step method of self-discipline that lead to ever higher consciousness, Christ consciousness, and eventually assure ultimate liberation in God's kingdom. And then Paramahansa specifies, he says, the man who performs good actions is the external karma yogi. He who practices yoga meditation, the highest action is the esoteric karman. But he who performs Kriya Yoga meditation, the highest technique of contacting God, is the Raja or Royal Yogi. He attains ascension, and thus is among the highest yogis. And so self-realization teaches, the yoga of Jesus, the yoga of Krishna, the yoga of all great masters, how we can retrace our steps back home. And the first two guideposts Jesus gave, to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, is really the yogic path. And through the teaching, we know now what it means to love God with all our mind and strength. We use the pranayama techniques of Hong So, Om, and Kriya to interiorize our consciousness, to step away from worldly consciousness to breath and the senses, and to interiorize our mind into the stillness, into the presence of God. And once we arrive there, it's equally important to then just open our heart and deeply feel and let ourselves be permeated with the light and love of the divine. At the same time, it's also important, as Paramahansa says, God has everything. He owns the whole universe. He owns each one of us. But there's one thing He does not have, and that is our love. And so Guruji says, you see, even God is longing for something, for the love of His children. And we will never truly be happy unless we, from the free choice of our heart, to offer God our love. Now, the greatest service, as Paramahansa points out, is meditation. For ourselves, for the world, for our family. Because if we allow ourselves to be permeated with the light of God, with His love, our outlook in life changes every time a little bit for the better. But equally important is to be of service. So when we feel that love of God a little bit within, then Paramahansa says that love wants to express itself. Love is not passive, it wants to really express. And there's this beautiful story of Jesus at the Last Supper on Good Friday, when they were all sitting together, enjoying the meal. When towards the end of the meal, Jesus took on an apron and He asked for a basin with water, and He kneeled down in front of His beloved disciples to wash their feet. And Paramahansa explains that Jesus was setting an example by washing the feet of His beloved disciples, that love expresses itself in kindness, in service towards others, and to be the least and the servant of all. It's not always easy to be the least and the servant. There's a little story of a mother was preparing pancakes for her two young sons, Kevin and Ryan. And being boys, they began to argue who would get the first pancake. Their mother saw an opportunity to teach them a little moral, spiritual lesson. So she said to them, if Jesus were sitting here, He would say, let my brother have the first pancake. To which Kevin turned to his brother Ryan. He said to him, Ryan, why don't you be Jesus? So it's not always easy. Recently, we had a joy to, together with another monk, to visit some groups in Germany and Austria. Just a couple of weeks ago, we returned. And we had the joy of visiting those beautiful groups in Germany, Berlin, and then we went down to the south in Germany, a little meditation group, Kempten, we visited, inaugurated their beautiful new place. And just being amongst them, just feeling that divine fellowship reminded me again what a great blessing we have received by having these meditation groups worldwide. And also a reminder, as Paramahansa says, environment is stronger than willpower. So we have to really allow ourselves to frequently, as often as we can, join a meditation group to strengthen our own spiritual life. And in between our visit, we had a few days to visit family. I have some family in Austria and in Germany, in Munich. And my sister in Austria, she lives very beautiful in nature, beautiful fields, and just was a beautiful time. It also had just snowed in the distance. When I took a walk, we saw the snow-capped mountains. And as I was walking along, taking a walk in the fields, I noticed at some point to my right was a beekeeper's hut. And next to it were some beehives. And it was a beautiful day, and the bees were busy bringing the pollen. And as we know, Paramahansa, our Guru, often compares the meditation groups with beehives. And we are the bees bringing the honey of our devotion into the hive. And I was just sitting there on the bench enjoying that scenery, being reminded of the great blessing we have to have even a temple. You know, we are so blessed here in California. And more, all over the world, we have these meditation groups where we can retreat and deepen our relationship with God, deepening our love for God. As I continued my walk, I came across also a cross, Jesus on the cross, which in this area, it's quite often, just somebody had put some flowers at the feet of Jesus, and there was a little bench just to sit and meditate a little. And as I was sitting there, I was reflecting of the message that cross was giving me. And it wasn't just, suffering. It was an encouragement to carry our lesser crosses bravely. And Paramahansa gives an even deeper meaning of the symbol of the cross, and I wish it would be taught in school. He says the cross is a symbol of a man as a combination of duality, as the consciousness between the infinite and the finite. The horizontal line, the beam, represents the finite world. This is our worldly pursuits or nature. And the vertical line represents the infinite, our spiritual efforts. And when these lines are crossed, they symbolize the cross between nature and spirit. And we have a chant where it says, spirit and nature dancing together. This is, in a way, the cross shows the balanced life. The vertical and the horizontal. The worldly pursuits and our spiritual efforts. And then Paramahansa continues and he says, and if the cross reminds us of Jesus' words, he spoke to his persecutors, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, then you are using that symbol in the right way. So as I was sitting there, I was just overwhelmed by the message that cross was conveying. To be actively calm in meditation and to be calmly active in our daily life. And to be able to look at the good within ourselves and in others. To be focusing more on the positive side of life. And so in this way we can make a difference. We always, our consciousness is more resting in peace, in God's presence. Now, Paramahansa also reminds us not just to serve, but as we serve, to serve as calmly as we can and not to be concerned about the results. Not to do our best, but to offer the result into God's hands, which is not always easy to do when we have expectations. I remember once serving at the Hidden Valley Ashram. We had prepared the dining room for the retreat coming up on the weekend. And we had waxed the floor. We made everything beautiful on Thursday. Then, and that night, there was a heavy rain. And then the next day, I wasn't at breakfast. But when I came into breakfast, the beautiful waxed floor was all full of soil because they had brought in the dirt from the previous rainy night. And I was alone in the dining room. And so I was just throwing up my hands. Say, couldn't they be a little bit more thoughtful, please? At that moment, Brother Nikhilananda, who was then the administrator, came in and he overheard my slight frustration. And he just breezed by me and he said, "Oh, just pick it up, just pick it up." And I thought, how right he is. Why should I let this little thing upset my peace of mind? And within 30 minutes, everything was fine again. So it's important that we do our best, but don't get upset by the little things of life. In other words, not taking life so seriously. Now the reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 28, 32, 34. It says, "With thyself steadfastly anchored in me by yoga and renunciation, thou shalt win freedom and come unto me. Taking shelter in me, all beings can achieve the supreme fulfillment. On me fix thy mind, be thou my devotee." Paramahansa Jesus explained, the easiest way to overcome disease, disappointments, and disasters is to be in constant communion with God. When you are with Him, nothing can touch you. We take shelter if we follow His guidance. And so yoga, he says, is the highway to the infinite, the quickest and most effective way of living in constant awareness of God. And I found one of the so important things in that being this awareness of God is to deepen our relationship with God and Guru, to make the Guru our companion in daily life, no matter what we're going through. And I remember Brother Anandamayi once saying, we were, as I was sharing with you before, we were celebrating his 80th birthday. And being very simple, he didn't want to have a big celebration. So we had just made a very large card for him, birthday card, and we photoshopped him on the front. In the Himalayan cave, he was sitting in a Himalayan cave, surrounded by wild tigers. And below we wrote, "Soon now." No, he always was thinking of being with Master in the Himalayas. And then inside we, expressed our gratitude for his example in life. And he looked at it with a sweet smile, and then we had a little ice cream. He very much enjoyed. And then at some point he said to us, I don't want to preach to you, but when I look back, those 80 years seemed like 20 minutes. And you knew that he really meant it. he really felt that way. Those 80 years seemed like 20 minutes. So many things have come and gone, beautiful things, more difficult things. But they all came and went. But there's one thing that is steadily growing. And that is my relationship with the Guru. And he turned to us in a way pleading with us. He says, please deepen your relationship with the Guru, because when you leave this earth, this is the one thing you can take with you, the divine companion. It is your greatest treasure, not just at the end of life, but every day. If we take the time through study, through meditation, in our daily life, the way we behave towards each other, becoming, as Paramahansa says, divine actors on this stage of life. And so in closing, some words from Paramahansa. He says, remember, you are a most fortunate child of God. Do away with the fear that you will never know Him. Mentally say, Lord, I am thine immortal child. I am made in the same divine image as are the exalted ones of your children. You have a claim on God as valid as that of the greatest saint. So be proud of yourself. You're free to seek Him, and by meditation to realize your divinity. You have no cause to be afraid. Identify with your soul each day in meditation, and you will know, I come from God, I'm life eternal. I live and move and have my being in that power evermore.
This has been a production of Self-Realization Fellowship, a non-profit organization founded by Paramahansa Yogananda in 1920. For more information about Self-Realization Fellowship and Paramahansa Yogananda, please visit yogananda.org.